Okay, welcome everyone. As we thank you for joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, as we start off as always with Karas HaTov to TorahAnytime.com for giving us a worldwide platform to teach Torah, to Kol HaLashon for their global network, to Torah Communications Network, to our Olam viewing on YouTube, on Facebook, our Zoomers, and those that are joining us here in our flagship station at the Agudas Yisroel base, Zev of Fairways, Lakewood. We did not have a sponsor until literally 10 minutes ago, where Dr. and Mrs. Block, it's not the first time, came to the rescue, and they want to sponsor in tonight's daf, which is daf Kuf Lamed Daled in Bava Basra. It speaks about the greatest Talmud of Hillel, Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, and he's dedicating the Shiur in memory of Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, that he should be a Melz Yosher for all of Klal Yisrael, and also that he generously is doing it, that I'm a little under the weather, so that I should have, Moshe Meir ben Esther Fadl should have a complete recovery. Thank you very much. It is more pleasant when we don't have to wait till 10 minutes before the Shiur to get a sponsor. So if you would like to sponsor and have a chelik of this Shiur, which, for example, the last Shiur was viewed on TorahAnytime.com alone by, I think, over 650 people. And that's just on TorahAnytime.com, not Kol HaLashon and all the other carriers. You could text me at 718-916-3100 or email me at rmmwsi@aol.com. Before we get to Lcha, sometimes it's such an important lesson that I take a look back at the previous Parsha, and this past Shabbos, one of my Choshev Balabatim here in the Agudas Yisroel of Fairways, Rabbi Yaakov Warman, asked me a very, very basic question, which I had before such a question, and that is that in Bereshis, the Torah tells us that Noach was 500 years old when he had Shem, Cham, and Yafetz. Right? V'yinoach ben Chamesh Me'er Shana, v'yeled Noach es Shem es Cham es Yafetz. We also know that Noach was 600 years old when he went into the Teva. We also know, as the Medrash says clearly, undisputed, that Noach was told to build the Teva 120 years before the flood. There's speculation of why he needed 120 years to build the boat. I mean, it was a massive project, and he didn't have a workforce. The people around him tried to stop him, but even so, 120 years is a long time. One reason why he needed 120 years is Hashem wanted to give the world the musar of the flood, of the specter of the flood, for 120 years, to give them a chance to do tshuva. Another reason the Mamlois says is because the Teva had Kedushas HaMishkan. And like the Mishkan, and like the Beis HaMikdash, the wood was not able to be cut. And therefore, Hashem showed him that for the necessary measurements, it took 120 years to grow a tree to the measurements of the Teva. The problem with all of this, and it is a very big problem, is if you do the arithmetic, and Noach was told to build the Teva, which is essentially the beginning of Parshas Noach, 120 years before, so that means that he was told this at the age of 480. But at the age of 480, he didn't have children yet. But Hashem told him, build the Teva, and go in with your wife and children and their wives. So how can he be told about the wife and children, he didn't have children yet. He wouldn't have children till another 20 years. It's a very strong question. I want to give two insights into this. The first is that here Hashem was telling Noach, you'll go into the Teva and you'll save the world. And Noach would have the very obvious question. What's it going to help if I'm saved? If Nam and I don't have children, remember Rashi says that they gave birth at 100 or 200 years. He's already 500. He didn't have children. He figures that he's not going to have children. So what's it going to help to go into the boat? After he dies, the world will cease to exist. So therefore, Hashem had to tell him, don't worry, you'll have children. You're going to have children. Right? You don't have it yet, but you'll have children, so that you'll be able to continue the species. But I want to add, there's more than that. Hashem was telling him that you should know that in the merit of building a boat for 120 years to save the world, that's why you're going to have children. And this is exactly what it said by Yocheved and Miriam. Yocheved was 120 years old. She never had children. While most of the young girls were having six sextuplets. Okay, Levi didn't have sextuplets. But she was already 120. She didn't have children. But Vayhi ki yaru hamiyaldu, he says, Elokim. But because they feared God and they saved the babies, Vayas lahem batim, they were granted dynasties. So the same thing over here, Hashem said, you're going to merit having children because you're building a boat to save the world. And I wanted to answer with this a kasha of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Because it says in the Pasuk, V'hakimaisi es brisi itach, I will uphold my covenant with you, uvasa el teva, and you will go in the teva, you and your sons, your wife and their wives, right? It broke them up to say that in the teva they weren't allowed to have relations. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says it would have been more logical to say you will go in the teva, and I will uphold my bris with you in the teva, with all the miracles that happened in the teva. So he answers, why does it say V'hakimaisi es brisi itach in the beginning? To allude to the fact that the Rishon of the generation wanted to stop Noach, and they swore that they would stop Noach from entering the teva. So he had to say, V'hakimaisi es brisi itach, I will uphold my covenant, and you will get into the teva. But now we could learn and answer the Orach Chaim HaKadosh's kasha differently. And that is, I will uphold my covenant with you, and you will have children to go into the teva. That's upholding the covenant. Okay, so with that prelude, now let's begin Parshas Lech Lcha. Lech Lcha me'artzecha, mi'melatcha, u'mibeis avicha. Moshe Rabbeinu was given the directive, you should go from your land, from your birthplace, from your house, your parents' home. Avram, you should go. Ela oretz asher arecha. Now this, by many of those that count the 10 nisyonos, the 10 challenges, this is the first of the 10 challenges. There are those that say this is the third. The first was breaking the idols of his father's home, not so that people shouldn't sin. And the second was going into the furnace of fire. And this is the third. But most of those that count the 10 nisyonos count this as the first challenge to leave his land, his place of birth, the house of his father, and to go to the land which Hashem will show him. And so much so the Medrash compares it that it was as great a challenge as the Akedah. Because by here it says the Lashon of Lech Lcha, and by the Akedah it says also Lech Lcha to Hara Maria. So it also uses a language of Lech Lcha. So the Medrash says to tell us that the challenge of leaving the parents' home and the place of birthplace is as challenging as the Akedah. So my Rebbe, Ramosha Zech Tzadik Levracha, Schusi Yogan Oleinu, asks a very basic question. Hashem said, if you do that, Vavarecha, I'll bless you, and I'll make you into a Goy Gadol. Right? Rashi says, here you're not going to have children, there you're going to have children, and I'm going to make you into a great nation. Veyei bracha, you will be granted the gift of giving blessings, and Vavarecha, I will bench you with money. Ask Ramosha, if you were told that if you go somewhere, you'll become rich, you'll have the power of blessing, you'll have the gift of children, you'll be great in the world, who would think of not going? So what's the challenge? What's the challenge? Why is it such a challenge? So Ramosha gives an interesting answer. Ramosha says the challenge is that Avraham Avinu didn't question him and say, why can't I have these blessings here? Why am I being asked to unnaturally leave my old father? Why am I being asked to go to a land that is strange and leave my culture? Why can't you give me these blessings here? But Moshe Rabbeinu didn't ask any questions. He says, that's an Eved Hashem. An Eved Hashem doesn't ask questions. That was the Messiah. That's the answer of my Rebbe. A famous answer is, this is a well-known answer, that the challenge is if he'll do it in order to get the money, if he'll do it in order to get the children, or he'll do it because he wants to do the Ratzon Hashem. Which one is it? Which one is it? So it says that Avram did it because he wanted to do the will of Hashem. But Reb Leibel Katz, in the Oyel Aryeh, he says a much more basic answer. And we know that for us, it's certainly true. And since Avram is the father of the Jewish people, so he's putting in our DNA, anything that Avram Avinu did, it injects in our DNA, that's the meaning of Maisa Avasin Malabanim. It injects in our DNA the ability to do it. He says, even when a person is promised rewards by God, many people still don't do it. For example, the Torah says, Aser to Aser, give Meiser, that you should become rich. The Navi says, as we say in the famous Haftarah, Uvachanuni na bezais, test me in this. And give Meiser, Im lo yarikaisi lachem bracha ad belidai, I'll shower you with blessing until yivlu sivseisechem aloi medai, your lips will weary from saying enough. Now, although we have divine assurance of this, many people still don't give tzedakah. Or the fact that it says, Oirech yamim biyamina v'smayla oisha v'chavod, a length of days in your right, and in the left will be wealth and honor, for learning Torah. Yet many people don't learn Torah. So we see that even when there is divine assurance, that's not a surety that we're going to do it. And therefore it was an assignment for Avram to do it, even though he was given the promise. But trusting Hashem in the promise, especially remember that Avram Avinu, it says by Sarah that Ein Lo Volod. She didn't even have a womb. So trusting in Hashem that this is going to happen, that in itself is an Nisayan. And Avram Avinu is showing that we could be Aimed ben Nisayan and trust in Hashem's promises. Now, before, and by the way, this is true in many areas. The Torah says, L'man yarichon yamecha, l'man yitav lach in kibbut av'aim, yet a lot of people don't do kibbut av'aim. The Torah says that if you say Amen Yesh Me'Rabba with Kavana, you could tear up a decree of 70 years, yet many people don't say Amen Yesh Me'Rabba with Kavana. It says that if you're Mavas Sedra, that it's Marichon Yom Avishnaisiv, yet a lot of people are not Mavas Sedra. I'll have some water now. Before I go any further, you just rinse it out. Before I go any further, I want to say a practical lesson over here. It's a contemporary lesson of very great importance. From the fact that the Torah says that it was a tremendous challenge to leave the land that he was used to, Artzecha, Maladcha, the place of his birth. You know, you might notice that foods that your mother served you, you like your whole life. Like for example, my mother used to make me hot, hard-boiled eggs. I like it till today. Pasta with cottage cheese, pierogins and sour cream. These are all for my favorite foods. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה b'dvaro. The place of our birth is very important. And Beis Avicha, our family. Now here it was different, because Hashem told them to do it. But otherwise, you should know it's very challenging. And it's very trying upon a person. Now this is important to know. When a husband, because of a job, wants to uproot his wife and family from their family, from their culture. Let's say they're living in Borough Park. They're going to move to Topeka, Kansas, because a big job opportunity opens up. But it's a big challenge. Do you know that children go off the derech when they're moved away from it's one of the reasons a child goes off the derech. When they're moved away from their friends, from their place that's comfortable. Person has a desire to go on aliyah. So we know that according to the Shitas that the Bnei Yeshiva adhere to, Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah kiyumis, not a mitzvah chiyuvis. So because a person has a desire to live in Eretz HaKodesh, it's a tremendous desire. How much the Chafetz Chaim wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael, the Vilna Gaon wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. But if a wife is going to be unhappy because she's moved away from her children, her grandchildren, her parents, then that's putting a person in an nisayon, which is not simple. That's one of the great things that we learn from the lesson of Lech Lcha. Now, if one of the spouses doesn't want to move, then the other spouse needs to be shoyel eitzah from a very great tzaddik. Now the pasuk says, "El ha'oretz asher ar'eka," to the land which I will show you. It's not enough that he said to leave everything that is familiar, but he doesn't even tell him where he's going. Usually it's mitigating a little bit the challenge when they're able to tell the wife, the children, oh, we're moving, we're going to have a really nice house with a swimming pool, and there's a very beautiful community. He doesn't even tell him where he's going. That's what Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, that he didn't tell him to make the nisayon greater. However, I want to tell you a remarkable balaturim. I'm embarrassed to say, but it's really not embarrassing, because my knowledge of what it's written on the Chumash is very small. What's written on the Chumash is very vast. So compared to what's written, I know very little. But it's the first time I noticed that the balaturim makes a incredible gematria over here. The balaturim says our eka is b'gematria 222, and it's the same gematria as be'anonim, with clouds. And balaturim says, and he must have this from the Medrash somewhere, although I never heard such a Medrash, that Avram was leaded to Eretz Yisroel by clouds. So if somebody asks you, when was the first time that we had Klal Yisroel led by Anani HaKavod, and you'll say, well, I know, in the Midbar. It's not true. And by the way, this is good Sukkot talk, right? Reflect on the fact that Avram Avinu was led to Eretz Yisrael by Anonim, with clouds. Now, speaking about gematrias, I always am moved to mention this gematria from my mother's father, my maternal grandfather, Rav Menachem ben Reb Yitzchak Yorowitz, Zechet Tzadik V'Bracha Zchus Yogen Aleinu. He told me he was a master of gematria. And he told me that he told this gematria personally to the Steipler Gaon, to the Keles Yaakov, Zechet Tzadik V'Bracha Zchus Yogen Aleinu, and that the Steipler had a lot of hanof from it. We learned about tonight that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai covered all areas of learning. And one of the areas of learning is gematrias. Now, there are all kinds of gematria. It's a vast study. One of the gematrias is gematria mole. So, of course, hard to compute this gematria. But the way it works is that when we figure the gematria, we take the full spelling of every letter. So if you do that with Areka, I will show you. So, Areka is an Aleph. Now, Aleph is Aleph Lamed Fei, end of Fei, in Gematria Mole. That's 111. Reish is Reish Yud Shin, which is 510. Then again, Aleph is 111. And then Chaf, end of Fei is 100. 100 plus 111 plus 510 plus 111 is exactly 832, which is the exact gematria of Eretz Yisrael. So embedded in the word Ar'eka is Eretz Yisrael. It's a remarkable gematria. Now, saying that gematria always leads me to the gematria that I saw in a sefer written before the age of computer. See, with the age of computer, this would not be so incredible, because you would be able to feed into the computer, Eretz Yisrael is gematria 832. How many psukim in the Torah have a gematria of 832? But this sefer was written way before even the Tandy Radio Shack computers. Way before. It was written in the 1940s, before they knew what a computer was. And he says there's only one pasuk in the Torah that is gematria Eretz Yisrael. And that's Hashem ish mulchama, Hashem shmai. Now remember, when computing the gematria, remember Hashem is Yud Kei Vav Kei. But if you tally up Hashem ish mulchama, Hashem shmai, it's exactly gematria Eretz Yisrael. Which, by the way, in our time is so important to remember. I remember that once the chief rabbi visited Staten Island, and he came to see my late Rebbitzon's Tillim group, which had over 100 women. And when he was in the house, so he asked me to tell him a vart. So I told him this vart. So I remember he took out from his vest pocket a fancy notebook that was in a leather case. He wrote it down, and he told me when he gets back to Eretz Yisrael, he's having a meeting with the generals, and he's going to tell them this vart. Of course, we need to know that although we sing rightfully the praises of the brave IDF soldiers, those that manned the Iron Dome and the David slingshot and the arrow system, we have to know that ultimately it's, like we say in davening, Eila v'recha ve'eila v'asusim. They come with their chariots and they come with their cavalry. V'anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu nasket. It's a shame. So that's the Hashem ish mulchama, Hashem shmai. It's all ultimately Hashem's name. Now, it's interesting that there is another pshat in Elo Oretz Asher Ar'eka, and that is you're going to go to a land, Asher Ar'eka, where I am going to appear to you. When Avram got into Eretz Yisrael, Hashem appeared to him. Before that, Hashem didn't appear to him. So that's the meaning, Elo Oretz Asher Ar'eka, to the land which then I will personally appear to you. Now, Reb Leibel Katz, in his Oel Aryeh, did not learn like the Balaturim, that Avram Avinu was led by clouds. As I said, that's a very big chiddush. So he asks, how did Avram know where to go? So he said two interesting reasons why Avram headed to Eretz Yisrael. The first reason, he says, is because Avram knew that the flood did not affect Eretz Yisrael. The Mabel was a big miracle. The whole world was drowned. Eretz Yisrael was not affected by the flood. And therefore Avram realized that the most special place on earth must be Eretz Yisrael. The second thing is he wanted to go there because that's where Shem lived, the son of Noach. Remember, we said that he was Malki Tzedek Melech Shalem. And we're told that Melech Shalem meant Yerushalayim. And Avram Avinu desired to go and be influenced by Shem. Remember, Shem had a yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever. Indeed, it's brought down that Avram Avinu had a memorable meeting with... Avram Avinu had a memorable meeting with Shem. As we know, Avram asked him, I studied the Teva, and I don't know how a person could survive it. How can a person survive? There was no water tank. There was no ventilation. There was no navigational equipment. How do you survive? And Shem told him it was in the merit of all the kindness that my father did for the animals. Remember, he knew that if one animal that was tamei died, that was the end of the species. And my father stayed up day and night taking care of the animals and all the creatures. And it was in the merit of the chesed that he survived. So that advice from Shem is one of the reasons that Avram Avinu embarked on a career of chesed. So he was traveling to Eretz Yisrael to meet the great Shem. Now, one of the promises that Hashem said to Avram is Va'avorechecha, I will bless you. Now, bless you is an open-ended statement. What does it mean? But Rashi says one word. Rashi says, in the name of Bereishis Rabbah, Va'avorechecha b'mamayin, and I will bless you with money. And indeed, we have that Rashi is consistent that by Birchas Kahanim, when it says Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, Rashi says Yivarechecha b'mamayin. And this is also consistent with the fact that the bracha in the Torah for Parnasa, the bracha in Shemona Esrei for Parnasa is Borech Aleinu, right? And to all types of yield, as kol minei suasa l'teiva. Suasa doesn't only mean grain, because we're not an agricultural economy. It means yield. We should have a good salary. So we see that bracha means hatzlacha with money. Now, money is a dangerous commodity. Money ruins people. First of all, it ruins people because when a person has enough money, then they don't have to turn to Hashem because they could solve their problems with money. That's what it says. Vayishman Yeshurun vayivat. Yeshurun got fat and they kicked. Why did they kick? Because they don't need Hashem. If they have people that don't have money and they can't pay their mortgage, and they can't pay their tuition, they gotta say Shilamala, But a person has money, he doesn't need to do that. So one of the dangers of money is that it causes us to forget Hashem. Another danger of money is a person has money, they become very susceptible to the ayin hara. A person buys a fancy house, has a big heated swimming pool, and a tennis court, and a beautiful garden in front of the house. People look at it enviously. That's why in Birchas Kahanim it says, Yivarechecha Hashem, He should bless you with money, v'yishmerecha me'ayin hara, from the evil eye. Another thing about money is money tends to make people arrogant, to make them feel that they're smarter than the rest of the folk. that they're special. Even worse, people that have money a lot of times use their money and wield it against people. I know people that had money and they became members of board of directors and they pushed through because of their power, rulings that hurt a lot of people. And the saying is, "Vi is do the maya is do the daya." Where there's the hundreds, could mean hundreds, millions, or 100,000s, is do the daya, is do the winning opinion. And that's all very dangerous. Money is a challenging business. That's why I pointed this out to you very often, that every word that describes money has a negative connotation embedded in it. So for example, matbeya, a coin, has in it tova, to drown. Kesef is kisufa, silver is shame. Zohov is the same letters as biza, disgrace. Mammon is the same letters as mumon, blemishes. Damim, money, is the same letters as blood. And we're told that for some people, their wealth brings down the lives of the people that have it. The best example of that is Korach. The fact that he was one of the wealthiest men in Klal Yisroel allowed him to buy cohorts and colleagues and brought him to lose everything. All his money sunk down to the ground, together with him and his colleagues. However, with all of that, we have to know that blessing is money. Because with money, a person could do a lot of good things. With money, a person could give tzedakah. With money, a person could give his family a good life. So it is a bracha. But it has to be v'yishmerecha. It has to be that Hashem should protect us from, and we have to always watch out that it doesn't cause us to be distracted from our belief of Hashem. It doesn't cause us to become arrogant, and that we protect ourselves from the evil eye by not flaunting it and make people feel bad for what they don't have. Now it says, Ula Avram heitiv ba'avura. And Avram, Hashem was good to him because of her, because of Sarah. This is a great lesson that a person should know, that a great source of their success is not their business acumen. It's not even their charitability. Gemara says, Bal Metzia Daf Nun Tes, we learned recently, not so long ago, this Gemara in Daf Yomi, La'aylam yehei adam zar b'kvod ishtay. A person should be always careful with the honor of his wife. She'ein bracha metzuya b'seich beisay shel adam ela b'shvil ishtay. Blessing is in a person's house because of his wife. Shenemar u'lavrom heitiv ba'avura. Notice it says that a person should be careful with the honor of his wife. And this is consistent with the advice that Rava gave to his townspeople in Mechuzah. I plead with you, Oikiru nishaychu, honor your wives, kedei de tisasru, in order you should become wealthy. This mechuzah was a coastal city. And as such, it was a city of great wealth. But Rava said, don't delude yourself. The honor, the money comes from the way you treat your wife. And this is one of the reasons why it's a valuable thing to have money. To be able to give gifts to your wife. The Rambam says a person should buy gifts to his wife according to his status. And I think that, by the way, that this is a secret embedded in our ksuva. In our ksuva it says, Ana eflach va'okir ve'ezoin va'farnes. I will work, I will cherish, I will feed, and I will clothe. And I think it's cause and effect. One will work, if he cherishes his wife, then he'll be able to properly feed her and clothe her. Because the key to his success is the covet that he gives to his wife. And the fact that it says, la'olam, whenever the Gemara says la'olam, it's coming to include something. La'olam yehei adam zar b'kvod ishtay. La'olam means even if a person has other reasons why he should become wealthy. When you're Avram Avinu and you have a door on all four sides of your tent, and you dedicated your life to being good and charitable to other people, you could assume that you're going to be wealthy because of that. No, la'olam, no. You always have to be respectful to your wife. Also, I think that it says la'olam because it's telling you even in tough times. Here, Sari Mena was abducted. Even in tough times, be careful with the honor of your wife. Even Erev Shabbos. Even Erev Pesach. Now, on this idea of being zar b'kvod ishtay, the Tufchi Yabiyu brings down a interesting story from Rav Ruderman with Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky. For those that are not old enough, we're talking about the greatest of the great, Rav Ruderman, the venerable Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisroel. There's a nice vignette that Rav Ruderman once met Reb Chaim Kreisworth, and they were schmoozing, and Rav Kreisworth was throwing around a lot of Yerushalmis. So Rav Ruderman looked at him in awe and says, I know Bavli by heart, but I don't know Yerushalmi by heart. These are the levels of these people. So Rav Ruderman was together with Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky by Shalashudas. And although the story doesn't say it, it's likely that this transpired by an Agudas convention. Because by Agudas convention, it was always Reb Yaakov's place to say Torah by Shalashudas. And as soon as it was 72, Rav Ruderman got off the dais and went out for a few minutes. And when he came back, he apologized after the speech to Reb Yaakov that he left in the middle of his speech. But he said that as soon as it was 72, he wanted to call his wife that she shouldn't worry where he is. And he said that he learned about the importance of honoring a wife from the Chofetz Chaim. He said that this is a famous story, but it's worth repeating. He says the Chofetz Chaim told him from his Rebbe, Rav Nechumka of Harodna. He said once it was a Chanukah night, everyone had lit their candles. Every house, the candles were burning. And Rav Nechemka didn't light yet. Now the Rambam held that you can't light after Shkia. But he didn't light. And he was waiting and waiting and waiting. 3 hours later, his wife came home. And then he immediately started saying the brachas and lit. So they asked him, why did he wait this? Shitas Rishonim, you're not yaitzi later, when it's already tichla regel min hashuk, when the feet are already not in the marketplace. So listen to what he said. He says, the Gemara says, Ner Chanukah v'Ner Shabbos. If you only have money for Ner Chanukah or Ner Shabbos, it's the night of Chanukah, Shabbos. And you could only afford a candle for Chanukah or a candle for Shabbos. So the Gemara says, Ner Shabbos Odif. You buy the Ner Shabbos to say Lahadlik Ner Shel Shabbos, and not the Chanukah. Why? Because Shalom Bayis Odif Tvei. To light the candle for Shalom Bayis, that's more important. He said, if I wouldn't wait for my wife, she would be hurt. And therefore, we see that Shalom Bayis is more than the Ner Chanukah. So therefore I waited for my wife and relied on those Rishonim that say you're Yaitza in order to preserve my Shalom Bayis. And then he brings down a remarkable story. This is not something Psak and Shulchan Aruch that the average person would know, but in Shulchan Aruch Yeridea, Reish Ayin Vav Sif Gimel, it paskins that a sofer who's writing Hashem's name in the Torah, he's writing Yud Kei Vav Kei, he's not allowed to interrupt in middle of writing the name, even if a melech ba, even if a king comes. Here it's talking about a Yiddish king, not a sakana, but even if a Jewish king comes, David HaMelech comes, and offers him shalom, he shouldn't answer. Because you're not allowed to interrupt with writing Hashem's name. Yet he said, he saw a great Talmid Chacham, he doesn't say who it was, probably one of the great ones in Eretz Yisrael, saw a great Talmid Chacham who was writing Yud Kei Vav Kei, and his wife came knocking at the door with a heavy basket in her hand. He ran to the door to help her with the basket, interrupting the writing of Hashem's name. And when he was questioned afterwards why, he said, well, we erase Hashem's name in order to promote Shalom Bayis, right? That's referring to the Saita, that we erase Hashem's name in order to prove her innocence so that she could continue living with her husband. So if we erase Hashem's name for Shalom Bayis, we definitely could pause in the writing of Hashem's name for Shalom Bayis. Imagine, a king offers a greeting, he can't answer. But for Shalom Bayis is different. I remember that I once had a Meshulach come to the Shul and ask for some money. I gave him some money, and he said, I want to give you a gift back. And he told me a remarkable word. He said, Mila is so important that it supersedes the Shabbos. Not only does it supersede the Shabbos, but even if it's Shabbos Yom Kippur, it supersedes the Shabbos. It supersedes Shabbos Shabbosan. Although you're not allowed to cut off tzaras, if there's tzaras on the foreskin, you cut it off. It supersedes the law of not cutting tzaras. Yet, there's a medrash that says, why is Mila on the 8th day? So he says, because if a man has a boy, this was in Talmudic times, he's forbidden for 7 days from his wife. Can't touch her, can't hug her. Of course, today it's until she stops bleeding. But in Talmudic times, by a boy, it's 7 days dam tameh, and then 33 days dam tahar. He says, would it be right to make the milah on the first 7 days? Everybody will be joyous, but the husband and wife will be sad because they're forbidden to each other. So therefore, we push off the milah to the 8th day for Shalom Bayis. We don't push off the milah for Shabbos. We don't push off the milah for Shabbos Yom Kippur. But we'll push off the milah for Shalom Bayis. Here's an interesting shayla. If you owe somebody money, maybe a contractor, maybe your landlord, you're behind on payment and tuition, you owe somebody money. Are you allowed to take gifts in order to pay money that you owe? It says, "Soine matanas yechya." If you hate gifts, you'll live. So listen to what the great Reb Shlomo Kluger brings as a raya. It says that Avram Avinu said one of the reasons that you should say, "I'm your brother," L'man yitav li ba'avurech, that they should be good to me because of you. Asks Reb Shlomo Kluger, what, Avram Avinu wanted to get gifts? Says, "Soine matanas yechya." But he answers, Avram Avinu then was a Bal Chayv. Remember, it says that he returned back the same way that he went in order to be Parah HaKafos, in order to pay his debts. If you're a Bal Chayv, to pay debts, then you're allowed to take gifts. Soine matanas yechya doesn't apply. The great Reb Shlomo Kluger. I always like to say this word, since especially when talking about Shalom Bayis. We know that it says, Vayet Oholoi, that he pitched his tent, but it doesn't spell it Aleph Hey Lamed Vav. It spells it Aleph Hey Lamed Hey in the feminine. So Rashi says this is to teach us that he pitched Sarah's tent before his own. Because it says you should be mechabed your wife more than yourself. And that's a very beautiful thing, but if that's the case, so then why don't we pronounce it in the feminine? And read it Vayet Allah, that he pitched her tent. It says Vayet Allah, his tent. It just spells it her tent. And I wanted to suggest that it's telling us that not only did he pitch her tent before his, but he did it as if it was his. When he did it for his wife, he didn't do it in a secondary way, but rather he did it for her as if it was his tent. That's why it's read Vayet Oholoi, and it's just written Vayet Allah. He pitched her tent, but he pitched it as if it was his tent. Now, before I conclude, I again want to thank Dr. and Mrs. Block for sponsoring the Shiur Le'ilu Nishmas Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, and for a complete refuah shalema b'meheira for Moshe Meir ben Eskefradel. And I again want to ask those that are listening to consider to be a sponsor. Vayera is up for grabs, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. It says, Davar be'itay matayv. A thing in its proper time, how good it is. Since we had a very contentious presidential election and a remarkable victory for a rather old man who is a complex personality. I want to talk about it for a few moments. The fact that the American dollar still has "In God We Trust" upon it is rather incredible. Because we live in a nation where a very large percentage of the people pride themselves in not believing in God. We live in a country that touts separation of church and state. And yet, the American dollar has on it "In God We Trust." And perhaps that's why, relative to much of the world, America has such affluence. Donald Trump invoked the name of Hashem more than Bibi Netanyahu used it in his speeches to America. The fact that he openly acknowledged his salvation from a very close assassination attempt to Hashem is a reason alone for him to be elected. He didn't say Hashem, he said God. But remember, I told you a story that the Ger Rebbe was returning with two Gaboyim from the mikveh. And they were about to cross a main street, like Ocean Parkway in Eretz Yisrael. But the light turned red. And he held back his shamoshim and waited till the light turned green. There were no cars coming from either side, and they were puzzled. And he pointed to them across the street that there were some either non-religious Jews or Goyim that said, that's one of the leaders. Look how he follows the law of the land. And the Ger Rebbe commented, what do we have in our existence but to try to be Mekadosh Hashem, to make a Kiddush Hashem? I heard from Rav Miller that one of the tragedies of America is abortion. Here's a man that one of his main campaign was about limiting the murder of fetuses. Okay, it's not to bring it to the level of Torah, but he's saving millions of children. In a world that was tilting dangerously to woke philosophy, where there seemed to be nothing wrong with the way our college campuses, our Ivy League schools that are supposed to promote our future leaders, was deteriorating, where a Jewish student was afraid for their life, and the previous administration was saying things like, well, we are compassionate to their cause. Mr. Trump said he would have brought in the National Guard or the police. The way he does not let the UN make a mockery of their accusations against Eretz Yisrael, these are all reasons why I believe the Rebbeinu Shalom allowed this man to win election. Now, of course, let's not confuse the man and the policies. The man, when compared to one of our small Gedolim, is like a difference between Mizrach and Ma'ariv. A man who is Bal Taiva, a man who is a Bal Gaiva. We are in no way, no pun intended, we are in no way trumpeting his person. But I think we could thank Hashem for many of his policies. Hashem should guide him in the right way. A person like that, his gaiva could always get in the way. But leiv malachim v'sarim b'yad Hashem, and Hashem should guide him to the help of Klal Yisroel and humanity in general. We want to thank you for joining us and wish you a good night and a good Shabbos.